name's Elliot Bartky from the Political Science Department at IPFW, and I want to thank you all for coming. This is part of our program on the promise and problems of democracy. You see how wonderful democracy is. A lot of promise and some problems here we have. I want to apologize, first of all, for not being able to find a room big enough to accommodate everybody. So it makes it a little bit more intimate. That's the advantage. And I just want to say one word. I had the opportunity to walk around and show the campus to Brian Bosma, the speaker, with the Chancellor Wortell. And I've had the recent pleasure to meet and get to know the speaker. And he strikes me, in the time I've gotten to know him, very much like a man, as our own Chancellor is, a man of vision. You've seen how IPFW has grown so much in the years I've been here, which is since 1988. It takes vision, it takes dedication, it takes a lot of work, and we have a very difficult time ahead of us in this legislative session. Everybody's going to have to suffer a little bit, unfortunately, and it's going to be the cause of a lot of discussion, a lot of argument, hopefully argument in the proper sense with no vitriol or incivility, as is so often the case. In fact, that's one of the things that has impressed me about the Speaker of the House. He's a man of strong conviction, but also a man of compassion. And perhaps, unfortunately, something very unusual, a man who's willing to listen to the other side, and to entertain and to think about very complex issues. So I want to thank you all for coming. Again, I apologize. Without any further ado, turn it over to the Speaker.
Thank you, Elliot, for that very gracious introduction, and was asked to speak a little bit on the promise and problems of democracy, and the problem appears to be not enough chairs, and the promise is this room is going to get plenty warm in the next hour and a half. I'm going to chat for a little bit, but before I do that, I want to introduce some other folks from your legislative delegation that are here. You have Representative Matt Lehman, Representative Kathy Heuer, and Representative Bob Morris. Kathy and Bob, of course, are newcomers to the General Assembly and are part of a new group of 19 members in the Indiana House that are learning quickly some of the problems and promises of democracy firsthand. And we'll be talking about many of those tonight, I'm sure. And then Matt Lehman, one of our veterans with 3 years of service, has found himself as the chairman of a very key committee, the Insurance Committee, that is dealing with some critical issues, not only for the insurance industry, but for Hoosier families, as we deal with so many health care and other insurance issues that are before us. So when we get to the question part of this, I'm sure we'll all have a chance to chat just a little bit, but I'll start off by just talking to you for a few brief moments about some of the challenges that we collectively face as a state as your General Assembly convenes during the next 4 months. We have a budget crisis, some would call it, that for the first time in our state's history, we will be trying to balance a state budget that has the same revenues that the state had 6 years ago. Let me put that in a different phrase for you. We have a 2011 budget with 2005 revenues. That's never happened in our state's history, even during the Depression. So policymakers of all stripes, Republican and Democrat, have said that we're not going to do what Illinois just did by raising income taxes 67% on its families, its income earners, and 46% on its employers, but that we're going to do what we in this room have done, both in our families and our businesses, and that's live within our means. That will be a very difficult discussion. I know there are a lot of folks here. Shook a lot of teachers and educators' hands here this evening as I walked up. A lot of discussions already taking place. Be very difficult because those entities that rely on state funding, like schools, like social service agencies, like other providers of key services, like institutions of higher education, are going to have to continue to do more with less. We'll try to make that pain as light as possible, but we've pledged to live within our means. Second key issue that we'll be dealing with, and which many of you are out to speak about tonight, is education reform. I am the first to say that those who say that we have failing schools and failing teachers don't get the big picture. Mom's a teacher. More importantly, my mother-in-law is a teacher, lifetime. Sister, wife's brother, aunts, uncles, cousins. In fact, between my wife's family and mine, we have 13 teachers, 11 public and 2 private school teachers. 2 of those, both our moms are retired today. So as a former employee of the State Department of Education, where I began my career, understand firsthand some of the challenges that you all face, and I'm sure we'll have a very interesting discussion tonight about how the changes that are being proposed in the General Assembly might impact you and your family. The third issue that's a very large issue that we're dealing with is our state's economy. And while we are doing very good things in that regard, we're rated first in the Midwest and in the top 5 or 10 in the nation on virtually every list, whether it's for the location of new employers or the tax environment. We still have many challenges. The biggest one we have is inheriting an unemployment compensation system. The new majority is bankrupt with $2 billion borrowed from the federal government. Finding a way to put that system on the right track, being compassionate to those who are unemployed in these difficult times and must rely on unemployment compensation benefits, and not having a significant increase on employers at a time where we're all starting to feel that economy come back just the slightest bit and hopefully get us on the right track. As if that wasn't enough to deal with in 4 months, we also have the once-a-decade constitutional charge to draw new districts for the House and the Senate and congressmen. You may not realize that your vote for Congress is determined, the district, the map that vote takes place in, is engineered by the General Assembly once every 10 years by constitutional mandate. Indiana is the first state that has to draw these maps in regular time. Our session must be completed by April 29th. We're the first state in the nation, the earliest state in the nation that will be drawing new maps with the data that's just now being compiled finally by the federal government. That census data won't really be in legislators' hands until March 4th is the latest projection I've had. So we'll have about 7 weeks to travel the state, talk to Hoosiers, and draw new maps before April 29th. Those are big challenges, and I was asked had a variety of forums here today, small and large, and was asked in a media availability in half of this room earlier today if I had any personal goals. And the personal goal that Elliot mentioned that I've placed also at the feet of the other legislators here is to return to civil debate, especially in the Indiana House, which has been really lacking in my estimation over the last several years. And I'm not just, unlike most, sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. A lot of politicians say that. I've said it myself a few times, but I really mean it. I gave the example of doing that for the first time in our state's history, on Organization Day, announcing that we would be appointing some Democrats as committee chairman in addition to the Republicans. It hasn't happened in our 194-year history. I'm calling it the grand experiment, and we'll find out. As an ex-engineer, I've conducted a lot of experiments over the years. I've conducted some that worked and some that didn't. So far, for my fellow scientists out there, the current experiment is working. And I attended a meeting last night of the Commerce Committee, and they got together for a little social discussion as the Democratic chair and the Republican vice chair, and the Republicans and Democrats in the committee sat around, ate a little bit, and had a great discussion about the future of the state of Indiana. So the short message is your General Assembly is prepared for the tasks that lie ahead, but the tasks that lie ahead are difficult and challenging. With that, I'd be very pleased to open the floor to discussion and give everyone a chance to chat just a little bit and welcome comments. Perhaps, would you all like to just say a brief word or two? Maybe we should do that first, and then we'll open it up for discussion. There's so few chairs that the legislators don't get to sit down either. They're standing, so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Bob Morris, and I represent the 84th District, which is primarily St. Joseph Township here in Fort Wayne. And a few of the committees that I'm serving on currently. I'm on the Environmental Committee, and I am also with the Environmental Committee overseeing a few things with IDEM, and I'm also on the Roads and Transportation Committee, and been a learning lesson just how many roads we have here in Indiana that we need to oversee. And today, actually, in committee, they were going over some measures in Northwest Indiana in regards to some heavy usage on those roads, and it's been a good learning lesson for me with the assignment from the chairman. And the biggest committee I'm on is the Labor Committee. And like the speaker said, we face tremendous challenges with our unemployment in these tough times. And we owe the federal government $2 billion to date, and the employers are the ones that pay the unemployment. And it's going to be a heavy burden on the employers of this great state. So I look forward to serving you, and I look forward to answering some questions here tonight. And I thank each and every one of you for coming.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Kathy Heuer, and I represent District 83, 40% of which is made up of Allen County, mostly the west side of Allen County, from the top of your county line down to Covington Road. I also represent 19% of Whitley County and a portion of Noble County. So I haven't seen, except for former Representative Matt Bell, whose position I now have. Is he still here? There he is. He's hiding over there. You may be my one Noble County person here tonight. Are there any others out there? There are. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. The committees I've been assigned to this year include education, which has been amazing, absolutely amazing. As of about 2 o'clock today, we have heard 12 hours of testimony from people from all over Indiana on just maybe 3 education bills. So I can imagine how much more we're going to hear. And the best part of all of that is we have been able to change the first bill that was introduced significantly. Speaker Bosma, to his credit, has been so open and knew that when he presented the bill that it was an imperfect bill, but it was a starting point. And we've had, 30 amendments at least on that bill, and he's made significant changes thanks to the dialogue that people like you have been able to give us. So education is my first committee. Local government is my second one, and I'm sure we'll have significant conversations there too. And then I'm also on commerce, small business, and economic development. So I too look forward to our conversations tonight, and I hope you will participate.
Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Speaker, thank you. I am Matt Lehman, 79th District, which is the west or the eastern side of Allen County and Adams County and a little bit of Wells County. As the Speaker said, I am in my second term. I do chair the Insurance Committee. I also serve on public policy, where we hear all the alcohol bills and the gaming bills and all the non-controversial things. I serve on government reform and also on courts and criminal code. And I also want to make one quick comment here. One thing that I know is different, not just now being the majority, but the Speaker challenged us as committee chairs to make a change at that level. And he said, understand one thing, you are the workhorses of the process. When we bring things out of committee, we want them to be right. We don't pass things out just to get them out of there and then we'll fix them down the road. And I found that very interesting just today in my own committee. We had a bill that I thought was a good bill. It was okay, and pretty soon some people had some issues with it. And my first thought was, well, let's get it out of committee. We'll deal with it on the House. And I thought, wait a minute, that's not what we're supposed to do. So we held the bill, and we're doing it the right way. I would ask that if you get a chance to come down to the State House. I had some people from Adams County down there today. They kind of hung around for a little bit, and they said, we've just never been here. We just never really have been through this process. And they were amazed to see how it kind of works and the speed at which it works. It's a flurry of activity, especially on committee days, which is today, Wednesday. So I too look forward to some great conversation tonight, and this is your public meeting, and with that I'll turn it back over to the speaker.
I'll just mention, I said earlier in a small roundtable discussion, the Northeast Indiana delegation, well, I'm from that other place, kind of in central Indiana, that place. As far north and east in the county as you can be and still have it held against you. There was a day when the Marion County delegation was really the star of the General Assembly. I will tell you that the Northeast Indiana delegation is it's remarkable. In addition to great new people, you have two of the most senior individuals in the House that are keys for our team. Phyllis Pond, who broke the glass ceiling before anybody knew what a glass ceiling was, and is our most senior member of our caucus, and the chairman of Ways and Means, and the taxpayer's friend, in all honesty, Jeff Espich. I couldn't be more thrilled that Jeff is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in these very difficult times. And I know if you want money, you may spit when you say his name, but if you pay taxes, which is all of us in this room as well, he has truly been the taxpayer's friend in his legislative career, which is extensive, both he and Phyllis's. With that, be very pleased to turn the discussion to. Oh, I have one other thing I want to say. How impressed I've been with the campus today. When the invitation to come here and participate in your beginning dialogues on the promise and problems of democracy was made by Elliot and Professor Bartky and by the Chancellor. It had been a few years since I'd been up here and toured the campus. As a former member of the Budget Committee, I've been here a number of times, and what a remarkable institution. I heard a lot today. I've met with some school board members, county councilors, city councilors, and heard some great things that are happening in your school systems here as well, from K through the higher ed, and very impressive, and enjoyed it greatly today. So with that, be very pleased to turn the discussion over to you. Yes, sir.
Bills. And for those of us who are not really pleased with the concept of a top-down, hammer-through-nail, central planning approach,
sure,
and have looked at the results since 1970 to 2009, according to the Department of Education, we've increased real funding 350% inflation-adjusted. SATs and ACTs have basically remained the same, and being that they've been renormed to dumb them down, in effect, we're getting far worse test scores for the money spent. And we've fallen from number 1 to number 19 and 25, respectively, versus major competitive international countries. For those of us who don't like socialized medicine and don't want socialized education, but want to have true choice and true options, and are confronted with the choice of either receiving absolutely nothing in terms of leaving the public school system and going to the private school system, or agreeing to continue to have a curriculum which they may extremely disagree with. Is there any reason a bill cannot be voted on the general floor that will provide a real option, whether it be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, for some sort of a vanilla tax credit or a voucher for all parents in Indiana to take their child, save from the $11,028 from last year's school budget, to save that $9,000, $8,000, whatever it may be, and allow those parents to take those children and put them into private education or homeschool or some other educational solution that may work best for them personally?
I have to tell you, sir, when I called on you, you looked like a softball question person to me, and it's definitely not the case. Okay, I'll repeat it so we can all hear. This is really the crux of the matter. I'm sure that many of you are here tonight, and that is education reform. And some of the discussions that we're going to be having this session about the future of public school education in Indiana. And we might as well get right to it. I shook the hand of so many educators on the way in and parents, and I'm certain that many of you are here. I see the Superman poster in the back, and I know we have people of all stripes here on this issue. So let me give you a little background, and I'm not speaking for the entire General Assembly. I'm speaking as a legislator with 24 years of experience, a person with 2 years prior to that of experience with the Department of Education, and an individual who has spent their legislative career working in the area of education as a member of the Education Committee and now as a leader in the House. First of all, and I may have mentioned this previously, I'm not one who says all schools are failing and all teachers are poor. That's not the case. We have outstanding examples. I know you have some right here in your community. I've heard some of the accolades received by the Fort Wayne community system here just recently. Most impressive. Every school system has its high points, and most have their low points, and some aren't getting the job done. After quarter century of nibbling around the edge of school reform, clear back to the days of Dean Evans and the A-plus program for education excellence. For me, not for the General Assembly, but for me, I believe that the only way to really impact public education is to inject some competition. And that is what is going on right now. Most of you may know, some of you may not, that you can select today the public school corporation that you attend, providing they have room. You don't have to go to your resident school. That's a recent development in the last 3 years. I've seen a lot of school corporations react to that and attempt to compete with their neighboring school corporation, which for me, I don't believe that's a bad thing at all. I think that competition raises all boats. I'm fond of saying, and I've said several times today, if my law firm was the only one in Indianapolis that gave municipal advice, our fees would be extremely high and our responsiveness would be pretty low. We're not, and we aren't. And I truly believe that the injection of competition in the system in a reasonable fashion that gives more options for families to educate their student in the way that's right for their families is the most important thing we can do. In fact, I was asked this, I'll get specifically to the charter school bill, which I'm personally authoring and which Kathy mentioned a few moments ago. I was asked at the Education Committee by a longtime educator that's on the committee, tried to get a lawyer in a corner. That's always difficult to do, particularly one in politics. He said, well, let me get you to agree to something first. It's primarily the state's obligation to educate a child. I said, well, Representative Smith, I'm sorry, we have a problem right at the outset because I believe it's primarily the responsibility of parents to educate a child. And the state obviously has a constitutional obligation to provide a free education to public school students. But we need to give parents, in my opinion, my humble opinion, as many options as possible. That includes the opportunity to have a charter school or for parents to create a charter school, have a trigger so they can change a existing public school with State Board of Education approval to a charter school, to give school boards the authority to create charter schools as conversion schools. That's what this bill provides. And if you're a union member in the room, you're not going to like this. These charter schools can be created and they're free of collective bargaining unless it's reinstated by those teachers in that school. It's really a tool to give parents, school boards, administrators more choices. Is that a silver bullet? Absolutely not. And if somebody says it's a silver bullet, they don't, personally, I don't think they're got their head on straight. It's one option. Another option we're talking about this session, it's kind of the nuclear option that you've referred to, is to give folks, especially families with limited means, not everyone, but families with limited means, the ability to get a portion of the funding that would be paid for them at their local public school, if they've been in that public school for the last year, and take it to a school of choice. That's been introduced. Some would call it a voucher. It's a scholarship. It's means tested. It's not for every family. It's for those. Right now, you can get a partial scholarship, even if you're of a higher income, but it's focused on folks that are at the free and reduced lunch level program, which is 180% of poverty. They would be able to take 90% of their local school corporation ADM and take it to a school of choice. That bill's not been heard in the Education Committee yet. Kathy, I've already warned Kathy to wear her Kevlar that day because them's fighting words for some folks. But it's time for the discussion about how we address the issue. And I'd be happy to go into other details on the charter school, but I'm going to let somebody else ask a question. Yes, sir, right here.
Sorry, I just have to add in that proposed bill is set at 250%.
No, let me give you the exact figures. You get 90% of your local ADM, the amount that would be spent in your local school, if you're at the free and reduced lunch level. If you are 200% of the free and reduced lunch level, and for a family of 4, I think that's around $60,000, you could get 50% of what you would get at your local public school. And if you were at the 250% level that you've mentioned, which is a family of means 4, family of 4 would be close to $100,000. You'd get 25%. So, what's the ADM at your school, ma'am? $7,000. So, the family that you're referring to would get 25% of $7,000 or $1,750. Yeah. So, yeah, certainly. And is that going to change? Likely. Personally, I think we need to focus for those folks that don't have the opportunity to exercise choice for their families and on the lower end of that scale. Yes, sir, right over here.
Yes, since we're looking at charter schools as being a choice. Since we're looking at charter schools being a viable choice for parents to send their students, can you talk a little bit about how the charter schools in Gary and Indiana compare in performance to the local schools, since that's an area that really needs some work?
Sure. We're still working on some of the figures that were circulated at the State House yesterday, and some of you may have seen, I was handed them by a reporter today, that had some statistical evidence that the charter schools were all at the bottom of the pack. Part of that, I don't say they're all at the top of the pack. Part of that is because statistically, the student population, the 62,000 students that are in charter schools today at, no, I got that backwards, I'm sorry. 22,000 students at 62 charter schools. 22,000 students at 62 charter schools. Some 71% of those students are free and reduced lunch eligible. 66% are minority students. I'm just stating for you that they're taking some of the most disadvantaged students and working with them. Now, let me. You know what? I can't give you just the statistics for Gary and Indiana. Now let me give you a few other statistics. Charter schools constitute 2% of the schools in the state. Of the 100 most improved schools by the DOE, 22 of those are charters. Of the top 10 most improved schools, according to the DOE, 5 of them are charters. So, silver bullet, no. Option for parents for certain students, I believe so. Had a discussion with a young lady back here who felt that her son with severe disabilities would not be served by expansion of charter schools. In fact, the mayor of Indianapolis announced yesterday of his desire to establish a charter school specifically for severely disabled students. So there's a lot of options here, a lot of different opportunities, and I guess my question is, for folks who really oppose this expansion of charter schools, which are public schools with public school students in it, what are we afraid of? Why are we limiting them in Indiana when so many other states are given the opportunity to pursue this reform and are having success with it in most cases? Mark, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome to Fort Wayne. Glad to have you here.
Nice discussion with you earlier. I've served with your brother and your father, and we had a long discussion about both of our fathers' mutual service in World War II and how much we miss them both.
We do. Thank you very much for acknowledging my dad. I am somebody who is very much opposed to the expansion of charters, and I'd like to explain why. This debate could, really go long into the night, and that wouldn't be fair to everybody else. So I'm going to limit my points. First of all, we have to be real careful with the use of statistics, as you know, and
absolutely,
as a lawyer, you know that the statistics you just cited reference districts, and charter schools, in essence, are their own districts. So they were included.
They reference schools, the ones I cited.
Well, yeah, okay, but what I want to get to is that the biggest threat to educating kids the way all of us want them educated is failing to get to them soon enough. We've had a real struggle finding the money to provide full-day kindergarten, and until Indiana takes itself off the horrible list of 9 states that does not fund early childhood education, we will continue to struggle to get kids started with. We're going to really struggle. All of us will. Charter, public school, it doesn't matter. We're going to really struggle because those windows in the brain open and close at a dramatic rate from 0 to 4, and we're not addressing that. But
no, I agree with you 100%, Mark. And we have voluntary funding programs now, it just doesn't get the job done. And when the state's economy recovers and we have something other than a flatline budget, there's little doubt that that's where we need to make our next investment.
I risked life and limb driving down to speak Monday, and unfortunately the decision was made not to take public comment until after all the amendments were left. So I waited a couple hours, and then I had to be back for a meeting at Southside High School. But what was disappointing to me, and I think is disappointing to a lot of individuals, is that for that 2 hours, I heard not a single question. And believe me, I respect what you do and what the legislature tries to do with this tough issue, so I want to say that. But there was no discussion about research and data that would indicate that a movement toward charter schools is the answer to improved educational outcomes for individual students. And the problem with that is that we're not selling hamburgers. We're not in a situation where if you leave my restaurant to try Representative Heuer's, I shouldn't be defensive about that. I should say if you get a better hamburger from her, well, then I guess I better develop a better sauce. But the problem we have is this isn't that kind. It's not a game. It's a really serious business. We won't know that. And a lot of these parents, I can tell you one of the worst days I ever had was driving to work by a charter school that dared to put a sign out that said, "It's cool in our school. We're air conditioned." And that was on the heels of Fort Wayne Community Schools not being able to pass a referendum, in large part, I think, because it wasn't presented well, but in large part because the folks here just didn't feel they could afford it. So when we ask, what are we afraid of? We're afraid that as individuals make choices, they're not making them based on they're not making informed choices. If they were, why would a charter pose an economic incentive one street light down from Irwin Elementary, which is a 4-star exemplary school? I will tell you why. Because it offers a return on the real estate investment based upon the way the structures are established. And there will always be students who will be closer to that new building than to Irwin or other buildings nearby. And that's not competition. Now, I finally want to close by saying this. We're not losing student population in Fort Wayne Community Schools. Thanks to the Herculean efforts of our professional teachers, our teaching professionals, and the parents and the students, we are actually holding our own. I'm very proud of that. And as I mentioned to you before, I'm even more proud of the fact that of 15,000 school districts in the United States, only 70 have 37 subgroupings they have to check off to meet the federal standard under No Child Left Behind. 70 have that burden. So far, the DOE for the year 2010 in Washington has identified only one of those 70 that made adequate yearly progress, and that district is Fort Wayne Community Schools.
I appreciate that, Mark. You shared those statistics with me earlier. They're impressive. I appreciate that you've got a lot of teacher support here with you. You said something I want to note. People are making uninformed decisions. So the government should make that decision for them. It's really the conclusion we have there. 3,500 families. 3,500 families are waiting to get into charter schools. And again, you have a great product. You have a great system. It's got performance. You'll be happy with competition, and you're going to survive. In fact, you're going to excel. That same kind of excellence is not available to every family throughout Indiana. And a district like yours should welcome the opportunity for additional competition. You said that yourself. So it's not the end of public education as we know it, like some would like to sell. Public schools, they're just free of collective bargaining if they create a new one or if they convert under the bill.
Thanks for being here again.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. This young lady right back here.
Thank you. Perhaps part of the solution for the budget challenges that we're facing would be to adopt the right to work for the state of Indiana. It's not always the answer, but I could see where if that were, we would, number one, encourage more industry to move to the state of Indiana, which would be a very nice thing for our employment, as well as for the cost to our school systems. I've been somewhat surprised by as you looked around the campus here, or even at Fort Wayne Community Schools, at their beautiful facilities. It's not always the most prudent. You can teach a child in a tent, and I don't mean that negatively to the Fort Wayne Community Schools. Nor should we always be looking at the teachers as the fault of the problem. I think we should start being a bunch of Harriet housewives with a budget and taking a look. What's wrong with our school boards volunteering from civic duty? I don't understand why we provide benefits to the school board members, retirement, health insurance, and so forth. It's usually a part-time job for them. There are just many ways of saving a few dollars that may not be huge, but when you put it all together, it can add up. And let the teachers have what they deserve. They're the ones on the front lines doing the hard work.
Right. Yeah. On the right to work issue, you think that charter schools pack a room? Wait till we start talking about right to work. We'll have to be in the 1,600-seat auditorium that I saw here just a little bit ago with standing room only. Very difficult issue to deal with. There was some added impetus. It's kind of a nuclear issue, if you know what I mean. This is something that might shut your General Assembly down because of the hard feelings about it. There was a development, however, yesterday as the United Auto Workers, the new regional president for United Auto Workers, announced that his goal was to organize the 3 foreign investment automobile plants in Indiana that provide a substantial portion of our manufacturing employment in this state. That's of grave concern to policymakers, and so that may give a little added impetus to the discussion. We have some others who want to chat about that one.
I wanted to appreciate your comment there as far as the teachers being on the front line and the teachers. And as the speaker said, I also want to compliment you on your button there that says Small Business Works, because being a small business owner myself, which is 80% of our lifeblood of our communities, I always try to encourage people to support local business. But back to your teacher comment again, both my parents were teachers, and as far as I'm concerned, they still are teachers. With my children and other children, my mother still volunteers her time in tutoring kids. But could you hold up your hand if you're a teacher and you're in the room tonight? Excellent. Well, I want to personally thank you and your service to our children. And I think the big focus tonight is, and you hit on this as well, ma'am, we all need to encourage the parents that to get more involved with their children, because that's, in my life, that's where my parents were my best teachers that I've had and still have to this day. So I want to personally thank each and every one of you teachers for the excellent job that you're doing.
Kathy, do you want to add something?
They always put these up here for tall people.
Why don't you come on this side of the podium so people can see you? There you go.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment on the right to work. I also serve on the Commerce Committee, and even though it is extremely controversial, I really think that we are going to see some interesting conversation on it. It is one of the top 2 reasons that employers do not choose Indiana to bring their businesses to. They don't expand here. One of the first questions is, what are your income taxes? One of their second questions usually is, do you have right to work? So we will have to be dealing with that. I'm not saying which side of the issue I'm on. I'm not sure I have an opinion at this point. So we'll be very open to hearing a lot of conversation on that. I hope you'll join in on that.
Ma'am, right here. Please. Yeah, you.
To make our opinions known that we are very much in favor of that bill, and we understand that it's keeping employers from coming to this state. And I realize that people who are in unions feel that it somehow threatens their jobs. And to me, there are smaller amounts of people in unions, and I don't think that it's fair that the rest of the people in this state who need jobs should be somehow deprived of opportunities and lifelong excellent careers in good industries because people who are in a union are afraid.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment on that. I appreciate that. There's a lot of sentiment in that regard, I can tell you, at the General Assembly. Yes, ma'am, right here. And I'll work back.
I am a member of the Teachers Union and proud to be one. I graduated from this university magna cum laude in '88, and I want the people to know that teachers in this school district don't get the kind of recognition that they deserve. Teachers are typically people who are very quiet. I'm not one of those teachers.
I suspected as much.
I have served as a member, teacher representative of my organization, both at the local and state level. I have worked for the State Department of Ed in writing state science standards for 5 years. I have been recognized by former governors when I was first a new teacher. I also was recognized by the National Council on Economics Education and traveled for the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. State Department to Lithuania to work with teachers in former Soviet countries on teaching them how to teach about a free market economy. I don't say that to toot my own horn. I say that because the teachers in this school district are highly qualified, not because we are I think that we're looked down on because of problems, and I teach where I teach by choice. I would not teach in a charter school if I were given the opportunity to do so. I have not had a raise in 6 years. My salary is frozen. The governor says that he wants to hold me accountable. I would allow and encourage anybody in this room to come to my classroom and evaluate me on what I teach, the methods that I use, the classroom management skills that I employ every day with my 150 students that I teach, and hold me accountable for anything that I can control. But the governor wants to hold me accountable for student learning. I can teach my students, but I cannot learn for them. I have a student who goes home and takes care of a 9-year-old sister and an aging grandmother with diabetes. She is failing my math class. She, as a 7th grader, has the responsibilities of an adult when she goes home. I can't control what goes on in that young lady's life when she leaves me. And the governor wants to hold me accountable for her learning and wants to tie my pay to her learning. I can teach her, I can help her, but I cannot learn for her. And I would like to know how the governor's accountability of teachers will hold up when my academic area, which is mathematics, is compared to teachers who teach in non-tested areas such as family and consumer science, art, music, physical education. I don't see how it's going to be fair. There's no test to test whether their students are passing. And I would like to know how the governor plans to make it fair. Because I am a qualified teacher, I am highly qualified, and my students made AYP, I am happy to report. But like Peyton Manning, he can throw the football, but it depends on the receiver, whether it's first string or third string, to make the catch.
Your comments were excellent, by the way, and we'll talk specifically about that. But on Peyton Manning's reception, how many of you here in the room have caught a pass thrown by Peyton Manning? On camera. And he came to the State House, and we honored him in 2005, and that was the last time I was speaker, and I'm at the podium up above, and I knew he had a football signed to Speaker Bosma, and I thought he was going to hand it to me. And he's almost where you are, madam, but closer, a little bit closer than that, and he turned and cocked his arm back like that and threw it, and all I could see was my junior year in high school when that went right through my hands, and we lost the homecoming game. and my eyes were about this big. I did catch it. Now let's talk about evaluations. You can put your hands down. And if you've already asked a question, I'm not coming back to you because there's so many hands up. Okay. There's some myths about the evaluation proposal, and there's some poor choice of words by highly placed elected officials about teachers. First, to acknowledge it. And as I started earlier, the folks that are before you now do not believe that all schools are failing and that all teachers are poor. There couldn't be anything more further from the truth than that. There's no doubt in my mind that you're a highly qualified teacher. You might be surprised to know that 98% of teachers in Indiana are either qualified or highly qualified under our current evaluation system. That causes some to be skeptical that maybe the evaluation system isn't rigorous enough. You may be shocked to know, those of you who aren't in education, that it's against the law to consider scores of students when evaluating a teacher. It's against the law to look at scores for that classroom. Now, one of the myths is that my pay is going to be tied to whether or not my kids pass a test. That's a myth. The proposal, which we have not yet seen in the House, but the proposal as it's been explained to us, is that we can now track the growth of a student year to year. Not where they are on a raw score of a test, pass or fail, but where they were the prior year and where they are this year. And the concept is that if a group of students are consistently in a teacher's classroom for a year, and the vast majority, or perhaps all of those students are receiving a half year of growth instead of a year, perhaps something may be up. Or if they're receiving more than a year's growth in that time period, perhaps something good is up. And just as in my profession, just because somebody doesn't make a grade on one day doesn't mean they're out the door the next. But the idea is someone who consistently can't get the job done, which are few, and who, after the application of every means of rehabilitation, training, bringing them along, are unable to make the grade, then to give local decision makers the opportunity to allow those people to leave. Now, I heard something remarkable today that I was really surprised about, that the Fort Wayne Community School System and the local union, the association, came to some remarkable agreements about personnel, and as personnel needed to be dismissed, it wasn't just based on seniority. That is remarkable. In West Lafayette, Indiana, as they handed out pink slips, they weren't agreeable to that. And the state teacher of the year was one of the folks, because they were a junior teacher, that was asked to leave. So let me just say that this evaluation process is difficult to talk about. In virtually every other industry, folks are evaluated on an annual basis, and that's what the proposal is to have annual evaluation of teachers. It's not just based on your scores. No more than 50% of an evaluation can be based on scores, and it's not the raw score, it's the improvement from prior years. Now, does that mean the art teacher is going to be, which I've met several of back here in the back, it seemed to be a whole colony of art teachers back there. There may be putting caricatures together of me at this very moment. I'm going to go back there and look with horns, etc. No, it'll be has to be a different evaluation system for them than it is for the math teacher. The year after I-STEP is conducted. But
if it's different,
well, if you're going to say we can't have a fair and equal system, so we should not evaluate, I don't agree with that either. So it has to have local flexibility. There's no doubt about that. So the art teacher and the math teacher, not going to be the same evaluation. Those who have trackable growth, should that be part of the evaluation process? I personally do. Now, does that mean somehow that's translated the desire to evaluate teachers and to provide that information and treat those who do an excellent job with incentives and those who don't do an excellent job with rehabilitation is seen as a threat on the profession. And for that, part of it is because of the unfortunate words chosen by some, which I disagree with. But the concept that teachers should be evaluated on an annual basis, I don't have any problem with. In many districts, it's prohibited by contract. And by state law, you can't look at a test score. That to me doesn't seem right either. Yahya, are you going to ask me about Somalia? Good. I had a Somalia question earlier, so I said we probably wouldn't cover that tonight unless, Kathy, you wanted to talk about Somalia. Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
Thanks for coming here.
Thank you.
I'm really blessed to see everyone here. Actually, I actually like to comment a little bit about the former teacher here. You can take a camel to the water, but you can't force a camel to drink the water. I hope you understood my phrase.
Personal experience in this regard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why we should use tax dollars taken from public schools to pay for what amounts to private profit charter schools defies the logic that forced us in crocodile's mouth. Now, wouldn't you agree, as most educators do, if charter schools were the answers for students, then students' achievement will already be high.
Okay. First of all, charter schools are not the answer. I was pretty clear about that earlier. Part of the answer. And I still haven't heard anything that caused, first of all, public schools, we have to remember, the voucher system, the scholarships, I agree. Bona fide argument there. You've got public money going to private institutions, as we do at the higher education level. We do that in Indiana. Public money does go to our private institutions through the family. If you want to go to Notre Dame, you get a SASE grant, you take it to Notre Dame, you can take it to Purdue, you can take it to IPFW, you can take it wherever you like. So we do this on the higher education levels. But let's set that scholarship or voucher discussion aside for a second. Charter schools, public school students, by the legislation I'm carrying, held to the same accountability standards as every other traditional public school in the state. That's new, not previously. By the legislation I'm carrying, required to accept any student, not cherry pick, but as I told you, the cherry picking right now is of the most disadvantaged kids. So another public school option that by this bill, I get a lot of head shakes back there, I'm telling you the facts. That it's absolutely indisputable that these are public schools that by the legislation I'm carrying, every student must be considered. So if you want to come grab a copy of the legislation, I may have it with me, you'll find it there. Not current law, but they're held to the same accountability standards. In fact, by this legislation, stronger accountability standards than traditional public schools. So I know there's a lot of pushback in some realm on this, but I still haven't heard the reason why this can't be another option for, if we focus on the students, for Hoosier students. Let's see, I'm going to come right up here. No, she's walking fast.
I have two quick questions.
Hey, please identify yourself, so everybody. I know you told me, but let everybody else know.
I'm Chris Broney. I'm a fifth grade teacher in Southwest Allen County Schools at Covington. And I'm actually also an adjunct. I teach here at IPFW in the education department.
I heard a statistic today which was very impressive. 39% of the teachers, I don't know if it's in the county, but in the region, teachers graduated from here.
I did not. I went to Goshen College.
Well, that's okay. So that's okay. But that's an impressive statistic about the regional campuses, really, how they act.
My first question has to do with the charter schools. You keep saying that the charter schools are public schools.
Yes, ma'am.
But I had understood that they're also profit schools, that they're making a profit. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate. Okay. They must be run by state law by a non-profit entity. Now, I heard today for the first time about some real estate deal. I know nothing of that. I'll investigate if we need to. Some local issue that never had heard of before today, but Mark and a couple of other people brought it to my attention. But they must be operated by a non-profit entity. That does not change in the current bill.
And then my second question has to do with my IPFW students that are coming into education.
Okay.
I am seeing higher and higher levels of anxiety about people choosing education as a profession, which is of grave concern to me, because in the past, education has been a very stable career for people who are very dedicated. If you look at the amount of education it takes to be a teacher, you have a 4-year college commitment. For most of us, there's a 2-year additional master's plus continuing education on top of that. If you look at most of the private industry, I would be making double my salary. Aware of that, I have chosen to be in public education. And I am a very dedicated person, as are the students that are coming in. But with what's allowed in the news and the things that are being said about education, the students in my class are strongly considering other professions. And my biggest concern for the state of Indiana is that we are scaring off the best and the brightest that we need to come into education.
Well, I'll share a personal story with you. I have a freshman and a senior at Purdue, freshman engineer, and a senior in elementary education, our daughter, who switched from pharmacy, not because she couldn't cut it in pharmacy, but because she really wanted to be a teacher. And as she approached it, of course, all that calculus and science didn't translate and get credit, so she may be there on her father's program of an extra year. I switched my major too, just as a PS. Yeah, okay, I will. I'll call her tonight. And I know I sense some anxiety from her as well. I'll tell you what my philosophy is, and you may say that, well, this doesn't comport with what you're advocating. It does comport with what I'm advocating. We need to return to the era when teachers were treated as the professionals that they are, the revered and knowledgeable person in the community, and not as members of a collective bargaining unit. Now that's okay. Now let me qualify. That okay. See, you guys aren't going to listen. You know what you sound like? Collective bargaining unit when you do that. Let me say something. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a little tough. But we have gotten into, and not just the teachers, policymakers, administrators, not here. There's great cooperation here, but a lot of places it's us and them. And many times it's not the teachers and them, it's the union and them. We have to find ways to return to treating teachers individually as professionals. And I know, I'm going to have hands go up in the back, lots of them. This would be one of the only professions, other than legislator, that you don't reward those who do an outstanding job with additional funds or other incentives. Now, as soon as I actually said it was the only, and then a reporter said, "What about legislator?" Okay, then we may be able to think of another. But in virtually every other field, we do reward those who excel. You aren't doing it for the money. My mom didn't do it for the money. My daughter's not doing it for the money. But to recognize and reward in some fashion those who excel, I think is part of the program. That's what the evaluation system is about. It's imperfect. There's no doubt about that. But that's why some are talking of it. Okay, I'm going to pick one from the back of the room, and then I'll come up front. Sir, you with the manila envelope in your hand.
Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you for coming. My name is John Eastis, and I am a 44-year veteran of practice teaching.
Thank you, John.
I stand and rise in opposition to some of the components that I think are absolute attacks on public education.
Look, tell me which ones you feel are attacks.
Specifically, there's nothing wrong, sir, with collective bargaining when people can dialogue back and forth and come to an agreement. That's a gentleman's concept. That's a democratic concept. Let me finish. I rise in opposition to some of the components of the charter school component that would permit, for example, a school system that may have closed a school or has a school temporarily closed, that suddenly would allow it or be compelled to cause it to lease that to someone else for a charter school for $1 a year.
Let me address that one. That one's
Let
me address that one, and then you move on to your next one. I just want to get that one out of the way. That one's under close examination. That's an imperfect solution to the vacant building situation.
I'm very glad to hear that because, you see, with that component, this is paid for by taxpayer dollars. Absolutely. Every building is paid for by taxpayer
And charter
dollars.
schools are taxpayer-funded public schools
And my
as well.
concern
That's the
is
difference.
then the
That's a
public
difficult
school system would then have to pay for the upkeep.
No. That's
what I
removed from the bill.
understand.
Absolutely removed from the bill.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely removed from the bill. Shouldn't have been in there from the start. There were a lot of hands in drafting that, and that was removed. It was inappropriate. And we actually added, they do have this right. If they're prepared to conduct a charter school, they have the right to use a vacant building. If they discontinue using it for public instruction, it has to go back to the school corporation. Has to be a truly unused building, not just an underutilized building, and we're still looking at more measures for that, and the dollar is probably not right.
So paying for the utilities by, for example, a charter school that would take
charter
that
school
building
responsibility.
Over. I understand that, and you're telling me though that the broken windows and the fire alarms and those other things, they
charter
wouldn't
school
have to
responsibility.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that fixes in.
Yep.
Thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you. Did you have another one? I kind of cut you off to address the one.
I think I'm done.
You sure? Okay, thank you. Sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to get to the one before I forgot the question. Ma'am, you've had your hand up for a long time right here. Hang on, here, I'll just... You guys can jump right in. Don't hesitate. Come on.
I want to change the subject to local government.
Okay.
Both the gentleman sitting next to me and I are from Noble County. We are on the advisory board for the Noble Township. And I'd like to know why, when you have just maybe one or two problems in an area, like some of the trustees and things, all of a sudden the legislators say, okay, do away with them. The governor wants to do away with them. That doesn't make it right. If you want to look at problems, let's look at the Senate, let's look at the Congress and see the problems they have. We work to make them work. We try to find solutions. That's what we need to do with local government. Local government is the heart for the people. We are the closest thing they have. We are the ones they come to talk to. And believe me, they find you. It was said in the paper that most of the people don't know you, couldn't find you, and that is absolute lie, because that's just not true.
You guys want to take a shot?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Thank you. My background is local government. I came out of the Adams County Council. I've heard those comments, and I would say if you went to several of my townships, they can tell you who their township trustee is before they know who I am. I feel local government works, especially in some of the smaller communities, and again, coming out of a small county. I do think we have to be open to looking at, and on the level of local control, of looking at ways we can combine some services. And I would say this. I've thrown this out to my trustees. We have one township that is predominantly Amish. We have a very difficult time getting anyone to serve on the township advisory board. We have a trustee who in the adjoining township says, maybe we don't need to each do the same job. Can one trustee kind of do both of these townships? Can we have one advisory board? Currently they can. They can do that on their own. But I don't think the state has given them any incentive to. And I think what we need to do is look at, if we have, I think the governor referred to it as a pioneer system. Well, there's a lot of things the pioneers did that we embrace, And one of those things I think is how we're structured is we are a representative of people, and we have our representative governments. I do think as things change, though, and as we do remove some responsibilities away, that we do look at, are there other options out there to be able to combine some of these services? And I think some townships have already done that. There's some communities that have done that. They've said we're going to merge county and local issues. Personally, I think it needs to be, that decision needs to be made at the local level. This is an issue that I think you're going to find within our caucus. We're greatly divided. I think within the Senate and the House, we're greatly divided. But the thing I will say about this issue, as a lot of issues this session, is they're being heard. We're talking about them. And for years, there's been issues that we've wanted to get the debate going and the discussion, and that's been basically we're not going to talk about these things. So I applaud our leadership. I applaud the Senate leadership. We're having these debates, and I think we will move forward on some government reforms, but we'll see where it goes.
I've noticed that you guys, somebody, is wanting to take the local and put it on to the county. My comment for that is one center county person have no way of knowing what the outskirts need Our needs in our area are lakes and a rural community. Our needs are entirely different than Kendallville, who is a large city. So there's no way they understand what we go through on a day-to-day basis. It has to stay in the townships. That's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah, I'll just add, it's a parochial issue. What does that mean? No, I'm not talking about religious schools. It's every legislator brings their local community's situation to it. And, for instance, the proposal, and we neither write the papers, although I've made every attempt to do so over the last 24 years. I can't write anything for them, and I don't write the governor's speeches either, although I've given several shots at that also. For instance, I could just give you an example on the issue to do away with the 3 county commissioners and just have a single county executive and make the council a true legislative body. Well, some folks in Hamilton County that are reform-minded and don't like local government necessarily, think there are too many levels, say, well, but if we do this, it'll be Bob, and Bob hates my area. Well, if there's a Bob there, it's purely by chance. So it's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. Matt's right. I made a pledge just to get it out on the floor, let democracy work, let the elected representatives debate it. We haven't been given that opportunity in the past by the prior management. Young lady right here, you've said a lot of things under your breath. I almost handed you the... I did. Well, is there a bleep? Is there one of those little bleep buttons up here? So I was going to hand you the microphone just to see if you said it that way too. Okay. Well, we may have a different definition of bleep language then. So, you want to give her the microphone so others can hear?
Okay. First, a comment about.
Why don't you tell us who you are?
Nobody else did.
Actually, we should start doing that. We should have done that.
Wayne. Yes, I'm Pat Moore, and I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
And what brought you here, Pat?
Interest in government,
okay.
Political activist.
Excellent.
And wanted to hear. And I really, my first comment is about right to work.
Okay.
When you talk about...
That's when you said the bleep language, by the way.
But I don't use bleep language.
Okay.
I said that's not true. I don't think that having strong unions in the state of Indiana is a detriment. Kokomo, just before the election, on NPR, they were talking about how in 2010 there were 25% more auto workers in the state of Indiana than there were in 2009. In Kokomo, the Chrysler plant and all of the feeder plants had hired people, put them back to work, and if I'm not correct, those are union jobs. I think, correct?
I said probably, yeah.
GM brought another line in here to Fort Wayne. They are certainly a strong union. So that's my comment. My question, I need you to go back and do Charter Schools 101 for dummies. You keep saying...
I don't put you in the dummy category, but I'll go back to 101.
You keep saying that charter schools are public schools.
Correct.
I believe I read, and I cut it out, and then I recycled it. And it makes me upset.
I have some of that, too.
I read somewhere that under these plans that charter schools, and you tell me if I'm incorrect,
okay,
are going to be paid like $500,000. These are private entities, right?
No. Go ahead and finish your question. And
okay.
Then we'll...
My question is, and then the gentleman asked about how broken windows and things like that were going to be paid for. Tell me what is so special about a charter school, what rules they don't have to follow that public schools have to follow. And by the way, one of my bleepy things was I thought it was insensitive of you to say that the people back there it was like being in a union.
I probably deserve that. And so
I'm not
you
a
did
teacher.
say something bleepy.
I am not a teacher,
okay.
And I'm not a
I
union member.
didn't mean to be offensive to anyone back there.
Okay.
But the hooting. Okay. Okay, so let's do charter schools. Not a private entity. Has to be they're public school students. The school itself is operated by a nonprofit entity, not a for-profit entity. One of the chartering authorities, and right now that has to be a state university or the mayor of the city of Indianapolis, has to be presented with a plan and said, here's what we're going to do at our school. We have a special school for kids that have dropped out of other schools. We have a special school for kids who are drug addicted, like the Hope Academy. We have a special school for kids who are of the lowest income and come from the toughest circumstances. And that chartering sponsor, Ball State or the mayor of Indianapolis right now, enters into a contract with that school building and its operator, a nonprofit entity, to say, all right, here's how we measure you, here's what we're going to do, and then they receive the state average funding for those students at that school, okay, from the state. If it's the state average is $6,500, they get $6,500. That's too much. It's $5,500, I think, state average. They get $5,500 per student. Many of them have foundations, but they don't receive any capital fund like local schools do. They don't receive any transportation fund like local schools do, other local public schools. So if the window breaks, it's got to come out of the $5,500 per student. Some have foundations that help, or foundations that have purchased a building and they fund the resources. Apparently, there's some question as to whether that's been abused in one circumstance here that I'm going to look into. But they are public school students at a public school. Now, what are they free of? They're free of virtually every regulation. It's performance-based. They have to meet the contract. Now, what the new bill says is if we're going to put accountability factors and grade public schools, as Superintendent Bennett is proposing, then we're going to put charter schools under the same accountability factors. They are not under those accountability factors today. Now, we're also giving more entities the opportunity to sponsor those schools, like the mayors of second-class cities, like universities, private universities that are approved by the State Board of Education. And we're also giving the ability to local school boards to convert a public school building to a charter school if they desire to do so. Now that's all in the hands of the teachers at that school. Only can be converted with the teacher's approval. Okay? That makes sense?
Are the charter schools in Fort Wayne under the jurisdiction of the Wendy Robinson, who is the superintendent of the Fort Wayne Community Schools?
No, I think they're, how many do you have up here? 3. Been in 2 of them. And, yeah, are they all Ball State sponsored? And I know you got an experience up here that not everybody's happy with, and I've heard a lot about it. But that's not the same experience that's going on everywhere in the state at all 62 facilities. So, and I'm sure that's that experience is some of the concern that's being expressed here today. There's little doubt about that. Okay, seated in a purple coat, and then I'll come up here. I'm picking you as a softball person. Was I right?
No, you're wrong.
That's what I figured.
I'm a public school teacher in the area, and
Good.
Simply had a question about the charter schools. Can a charter school ask a student to not come back to their building and return to a public school?
Well, first of all, let's get our terminology right.
Can a public charter school
they're in a public school
ask a student to return to a public school?
Just like any other public school, yes, you can expel a student.
So how is that holding them to the same standards? Because public schools cannot get rid of their students.
Public schools can expel a student.
So are the expulsion rates? So you're going to expel a student from a charter public school to a public school. Is that how that works?
I really can't answer your question. I suppose so.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So but there are some schools that are set up to receive, some charter schools that are set up to receive just this type of student. The ones that have been expelled.
But my public school receives that type of student every single day. My question, I just don't understand how it's the same standard if a public charter school can tell a student to go back to a public school. It's not the same standard because we have to educate that child.
Well, you're right. You're right. And there aren't thousands of examples like that. Yeah. That's right. That person has a right to attend the statutory and constitutional right, really, to attend the public school that they reside in. Yeah. So if they're expelled from the charter public school for behavior, then if they don't have some other option, yeah, they have to go to the resident public school. So, it's true. Yeah, and it does go the other way around, too. There's plenty of kids, and there are whole schools set up to receive students who are expelled from traditional public schools or charter schools that are set up to receive those children. That's their mission.
Not the context of this bill.
Okay. That's because there's caps on charter schools. We're trying to remove the caps. We're trying to make it so...
That's not
yeah.
the context of this bill.
Okay, well...
The context of this bill does not address special ones that deliver discipline, that deal with special populations.
Actually, it does just that.
But it's not
it allows,
specific to...
Okay, well, this is a different mindset, perhaps. We could specifically legislate and regulate all these things, or we could open this up so that people can, educators, some in this room, can innovate, can try something different.
We're not innovating now.
Why do you take it immediately as an insult that you're not innovating now?
By making the statement that charter schools are going to innovate, you are saying we are not.
Well, I didn't say that, but you can infer what you would like, and I didn't intend to say that if I did. And yeah, there's innovation going on all over the place. Are you setting up a program to take kids that are expelled from the traditional public schools here?
Yes.
Okay.
As existed.
Great. Well, then why are you threatened by someone else setting up a similar program?
I'm not. What I'm
okay. Well, some seem to be.
Your bill does not address opening these for special populations, and you're referring and comparing to schools that open for special populations.
I'm giving an example. You're right. They're not all set up that way.
The teacher here asked a question about students being dismissed from charter schools having to return to public schools. And your argument was that there are special charter schools that service those students.
No,
if your
that was really
option is charter schools to service them, why isn't it written in the bill that way?
Because that's not the only opportunity for charter schools. We'd like to see a lot of opportunities for charter schools. They are not a cherry-picking opportunity, although I'm sure not everyone's going to agree with that. I think statistics show just the opposite. It's my hope that there are more choices for parents and more choices for educators who can set up these charter schools themselves, more opportunities for administrators and school boards who can set up these charter schools. Silver bullet? No. Some are hearing me say this is a silver bullet. I've not said that anywhere through. What I have said consistently is parental choice key. Parents in charge of their kids' education. And to give them more choices, this is my first rodeo, my first year. If I'd only been in 3 months, I'd say, oh, I'm walking away. Been doing it 25. And I have no doubt that giving parents more choice and more opportunity will help public schools, not be the detriment of them. I really believe that. And it's because there's great educators in our public schools that'll react and are reacting. So I would like to take one from this young lady that I had a conversation with about her son.
My name is
Thanks.
Heather Ostrowski. I'm an educator, which probably is a dangerous thing to say in this room.
I'm shocked, Heather.
I am not here as an educator. I am here as the parent of a significantly challenged child, and I am imploring you, all of you up there, not to forget about those students who are the most significantly affected and who could be the most significantly affected by the changes that are being proposed. I am just here to ask you, please think about those children with IEPs. And while I think it's admirable that the mayor of Indianapolis wants to set up a school just for those kids, that's not where I want my son. I want my son with everyone else because you know what? I know this isn't PC, but there is not a retard line at Walmart. So my kid, when he was 5 years old, ran the wrong way on the soccer field with his shirt on backwards so that he could learn how to function in life. And I'm just imploring you, please, 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 as you think about these changes to education, just please think about those kids and put a safeguard in the charter schools. Put a safeguard in it that says you have to be equipped to handle all students. Please give all. I'm a parent, and I'm saying please give those parents who don't have a voice an opportunity so that all students do have, because there is a parent that can't come here tonight and say this and beg you, please give my child a better opportunity, and I'm trying to be that face to say to you, don't forget those children.
Thank you. And I had a very nice discussion over here with Jeff Scheuer and his family. Jeff wrote me a nice letter that I'm going to take back with me, Jeff, and believe me, you're speaking to the crowd on this one. Have a son that was born with some special challenges in life that are not nearly as significant as what Jeff is dealing with or what your son is dealing with. I understand the special needs of special students and agree with you. And I'm thrilled that your choice is working right for you, and we don't want to detract from that in any way. So thank you. Gentleman back here in the back, right there, and then I'll come back up here.
Thanks. I'm new to teaching, but I'm not new to dealing with middle school and high school age kids. I've worked with them my entire professional career, which spans back to 1997. I've worked with kids in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is one of the richest counties in the world, kids who come from six-figure incomes, kids whose parents are high-level CIA, Department of Justice, and State Department kids who grow up in those families. I've worked with kids from low-income families, from broken homes, and obviously broken homes can come from rich or poor. The point is, the common thread that I have seen, whether a kid comes from a very poor family or an extremely rich family, is this. When parents are not involved, when they are not engaged, when they are not supportive, encouraging, when they do not provide rules, boundaries, and discipline in the home, those kids suffer.
Yeah,
now, as an educator, I feel like what I'm being told is that those kids who don't have all that at home, and besides being an educator, I'm also a parent of a soon-to-be 13-year-old and a 10-year-old daughter. So I
it's
stand
just
before,
getting ready to begin for you.
Yeah,
13,
but I
10.
stand before you more as a parent than as an educator, because I provide that to my kids. There is love, support, encouragement, discipline, boundaries. My kids make the honor roll. They get that from their mom.
Same in our family.
My son recently brought home a D on his report card. He can do better. He's been grounded. No PlayStation. No computer. Limited TV, because he likes to watch the History Channel, because his dad's a social studies teacher. My point is, we've been dancing around this issue about parents. The issue, we have a education crisis because we have a parenting crisis. They are not mutually exclusive issues. They are intertwined. And to deal solely with the educational crisis without dealing with the parental crisis, you will continue to have an education crisis for years and decades.
Do you have a suggestion on this? I tell you, we have for decades attempted to legislate parents being interested in their child's education, and there's nothing we can do to make it happen. But I'd be thrilled if you have. Kathy's going to talk.
We may not be able to make that happen, but don't start holding me as a teacher accountable for a slew of kids. Like this lady said, we can teach them, but we can't learn them. And I'm sure all of us could give you. Even I've only been a teacher now for 3 months. I came in late. The teacher got moved, and they called me, and here I am. All right, I was ready to go. But we all have anecdotal evidence of calling up parents. Your kid's not turning in work. They're not doing anything. They're not bringing their book, so on and so forth. And it falls on deaf ears. It's like making bricks without straw.
Sir, you are exactly right. And I hope that you hold up as much as I will hold up Wendy Robinson as a perfect example of a superintendent who is trying so hard to get the parents involved, and she has been innovative. I urge you to look at the project that she has started with trying to get the parents back into the schools by having the children run parent-teacher nights. She's doing some innovative things, and I hope you praise her for that. I certainly hope that she receives statewide recognition. And who knows, maybe she'll be our next superintendent of education.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The concept that we shouldn't evaluate teachers because parents are bad, I may break there, but there's no doubt in my mind that you're right, that the problem is in many homes. And, yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yes, sir, right here.
Of SCAN, and I'm not here just for SCAN, but I'm actually here for a consortium of not-for-profit agencies.
What does that stand for, sir? Others may know.
Stop Child Abuse and Neglect.
Okay.
I'm here for a group of not-for-profit agencies that for the past several months have been trying to affect changes in the law that would allow us to help you, and I bring this back right to your beginning comments about how the legislature is facing financial difficulties, and all of our members in our group have been affected adversely as a result of that. It's affected our ability to help those disadvantaged members of the community that many of you have spoken about tonight, and that will eventually end up in the schools where you all teach. What we are trying to do is to effect very modest changes to laws which are restricting our ability to raise funds. We're trying to help ourselves right now to fill the funding gap that we're facing as a result of the loss of state monies. One of the things that I have learned during this whole process is that there are laws that prohibit not-for-profit agencies from, among other things, using credit cards to sell raffle tickets to raise money, prohibit us from using monies that we have raised to pay for the salaries of our employees, and that's our single biggest expenditure, and are generally handcuffing us in our ability to fulfill our missions. What's even more troubling to me, however, is the realization that the state of Indiana, through the Lottery Commission, allows for the use of credit cards to go buy as many lottery tickets as you like. The Indiana Gaming Commission and the casinos in this state, anybody wanting to walk into a casino and pull out a credit card can engage in games of chance for as long as they like. But amazingly, we can't allow the people who support us, who really aren't concerned about making a lot of money at a bake sale, but who want to support us because of the good works that we do, they can't use a credit card to support us. That's one of the few changes, there are several, that have been introduced in a bill by Senator Cruz. It's not before you yet, but it's something that we hope that all of you would look at and try to support. Again, what these not-for-profit agencies do are important not only for the most disadvantaged members of the community, but in the end, what happens to these people is going to affect all of us. So we need your help in getting that done.
Yeah, you caught my ear on the way in on this. I'm the chair of a foundation that employs 90 blind and visually impaired individuals in Indianapolis. And I'm going to look into that. You say Senator Cruz's bill, and yeah, Matt, you want to?
Yeah, I worked with Dennis a little bit on that bill in the Senate. We did not get one filed in the House, but it goes beyond just that one issue. I think there's multiple issues in there, and really it's a charity gaming bill is what it is, and it addresses a lot of the issues that have to do with how you can use your employees during these fundraiser events. There was a change several years ago on the amount of fees you had to pay, and we're looking at reducing those and some things like that. Because again, at a time when your revenue is down, it's not in our best interest to begin to handcuff you and say, you know, your charity gaming has to meet certain criteria and so on. So I think I don't know where it's at in the Senate, where the status of that bill is, but we'll continue to work on trying to get that out of both houses.
Okay, a couple more right here. You've been very patient.
Yes, I was just wondering, when exactly do you expect to have the right to work law come up? It's 1028, I think.
We don't exactly have a plan on it at the moment. It's probably the largest issue out there.
Yes.
That honestly, we have Republicans that are for it, Republicans that are against it. It's been. May I speak out for a moment? The governor's expressed the fact that he doesn't want to deal with the issue this year. That it's a distraction to some of the other critical issues. Yeah. Some of the other publicly stated it. The Senate has reluctance to deal with it at this point. That's been stated publicly as well. Yes, I do support it. I voted for it in the past when it's been on the floor of the House. But I also am placed in charge of being sure that we get through this legislative session in the key areas that I mentioned to you, including a budget and maps that govern the next decade. And this is probably the one issue, although some of the education reform is equally as volatile. Sure. It's probably the one issue that has the ability to completely off-track the General Assembly from its work. So that's what we're considering right now, and I'll just be real truthful with you. We don't know yet.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. I appreciate it. I know it seems like a no-brainer until you have 20,000 union carpenters and pipe fitters at the General Assembly, as we did in 1996. I had personal bodyguard that day. It's not without its concerns. So, yeah. Okay. Ma'am, right there.
Which one did he point to?
Oh, she's right here. Right here.
Thank you. You started out with the meeting discussing the budget and how that we were in a crisis, and I think that's what I keep coming back to when I'm thinking about the charter schools. I'm not concerned with the competition. I've not seen anything that looks good with the charter schools. Every year I get students who leave the charter school, and they usually leave the school right after the funding deadline, and they come without their funding then. You mentioned,
I hear this a lot. Is it hundreds, thousands of students?
I'd say hundreds.
Hundreds.
In
Be a
Fort
large
Wayne.
percentage of those that are enrolled.
A lot of them. And they come with skills that are pitiful. I don't know what's going on in those charter schools, but trust me, I am not concerned about the competition. But what I am concerned about is your budget. And you said from the beginning that we are in a crisis. So if we have limited funds, this is what I'm concerned about. How can we do our job if you give this money to this group and this group and this group? We only have so much money. Where are you going to get the money that you're passing out?
Every one of those students is a public school student that's going to be funded someplace, in your school or at a charter school. Same funding, actually probably less in the charter school, depending on what you receive.
So the funding that was cut last year, we're going to get that reinstated?
I didn't say that. I said the funding that follows that student is either going to be at your school or it's going to be at the charter school. Both public schools, same funding. It's not like a new student that's been created out of whole cloth someplace that they're imported from Ohio or something like that. It's a student that's either in the traditional public school being funded at the level of the ADM for that school or at a charter school at the statewide average.
But how is the school system going to maintain the level of work that they've been doing if their money is taken away from them?
Okay, now that's a different question. The charter schools do not take money away from the school. Now,
they don't. Well, if we've
it's
got
the student goes,
extra
the money follows.
If we've got extra money, I'm okay with it. Then that's good.
Yeah, no,
that's good.
The money follows the student. The student's not there. Okay, and if it's one student, I know that it doesn't make a difference. But it was 22,000 students, then it makes sense that they're funded in a public charter school at that level. Now, education funding generally, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for all of us. It's our goal to flatline, at best case, to flatline education funding from what was appropriated, but from what was actually distributed to schools in the last 2 years after the governor's $300,000 or $300 million cut overall. So it's going to be a difficult challenge for us. Doesn't mean every school corporation is going to receive the same amount because we'll have a new school funding formula. Somebody said in a deal earlier they didn't graduate from algebra with high grades, so they didn't understand that. Let me tell you, they joined great company. There's only 4 or 5 people in the state that understand the school funding formula. We do not let them travel together. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's a very complex formula, and so it doesn't guarantee that every school corporation is going to get what they got in the past. There's complexity formula with it. The more complex, in quotes, the student, the more funding, and there's a foundation amount that every student gets. So it's complicated, but our goal is to have education funding same as it was in the last 2 years, and that's unlike some states that have cut 17, 20%. Gentleman right back here has been very patient, and then we'll. Please identify who you are again.
My name is Ron Crosby.
I'm
a teacher at Leo High School.
Great.
Number one, I'm very honored to be a teacher. I think it's using your word, a profession I should be proud of, and I think we deserve respect.
Thank you. I agree 100%.
Also, to come to this meeting, I have a slew of work to do.
Me too.
That I had to step away from to come here. So that's why, once again, I thank you for coming. Let me address a couple things. First, in terms of money that goes from a public school to a charter school if it is created, we happen to have a school corporation that we have one school that has, as far as I'm concerned, they had a great administrator, they had great teachers, and that by the state of Indiana, because of certain rules that they had, it was considered a failing school. In fact, they made improvements. The state visited the school. They immediately set up a set of criteria that basically fired the principal, which, by the way, now he's at one of the more successful schools in the state of Indiana. And you watch, he will be considered a great principal. It makes no sense. What it feels like is I've actually taught for 35 years. I don't want to label myself being an old timer.
What do you teach?
I teach mathematics.
What
Love what I do.
What level? I'm sure. What level do you teach?
Right now I'm teaching senior math classes, the pre-calc, the AP calc, statistics, things like that.
Excellent.
I would like to see the numbers. Harding, we're talking about turning that particular school into a charter school. As I understood it, and I want to see the numbers. I'm a numbers guy too. I want to see exactly what's going to happen to the rest of the corporation if that's set up. What we originally were informed is we were going to lose a great deal of money from different funds. So to fund that school adequately for private organization, I'm glad to hear it's not for profit, but for a private organization to run it, it was going to rob from the rest of us. We were going to have serious issues. So rather than talking generalities, I want to see the numbers in terms of what would happen to our corporation if they had set up that school.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to look into it because I've heard a lot of discussion. I don't know if that's where most of this pushback is coming, the specifics that are happening there. And I'm interested in seeing this myself. But the state funding, I'm giving you the number.
Right.
It's the state average is what they receive, state funding that they receive at a public charter school for that student. Now, what happens intra-corporation, can't tell you that, and I don't know what the specific plan was here. The state funding is the statewide average, which is probably less than what your per-student funding is at the other school.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, sir.
The other thing that I want to make is over the years, we have been required to do many, many, many different things, and new rules get thrown at us. And what happens is it makes it more and more difficult to focus on what I always thought our goal was. One of the worst things to happen to schools, in my opinion, and I think others may back me up here, was the I-STEPS test. In essence, what happened is our focus changed. If we didn't do well on a test that really wasn't getting kids ready for college, it really wasn't doing some of the jobs that we were supposed to be doing, we were considered a failing school. And therefore, and it was, I could go on and on and on. Interestingly, I'm also very involved with foreign exchange students. What's the difference between all these schools that are considered great, these countries rather, that are considered to have a great education, and ours is number one? We're being compared to the best of the best in other countries. In other countries also, and I ask every one of the exchanges that we've had, if you don't do well in school, who do you blame? The answer is, well, it's me. I'm obviously not doing the job. Not so in the U.S., not anymore. We have jokes about that. But the reality is, if kids don't learn, they turn and blame somebody else. And so I think ultimately, I think the parents do need to take responsibility, but ultimately it's the kids' job to learn, and we have to stop giving them excuses. We have to hold them accountable.
You're right.
So,
you're right.
Now, there's many other things I'd want to say. I would love to talk again, but thank you for your time, and thank you for coming here and listening.
Thanks. Thank you. The gentleman right in front of you right there. Get some of the middle group here.
First of all, thank you for being here. I'm Chris Hemsel. I'm superintendent up at Northwest Allen County Schools.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take you in a little bit different direction than what we've been talking about this evening.
I'd say that's a relief, but I suspect it won't be.
I'm also not going to put you on the spot to give an answer here this evening, but I want to make you aware of something.
All right.
I know sometimes we do things with the best of intentions, but sometimes there's unintended consequences. And one
it's
of those,
especially true in the legislative process, by the way.
And one of those happens to be property tax caps.
Okay.
From 1995, I believe, until 2008, there was a process for building projects. In Northwest Allen County Schools, our population happened to explode during that particular time, and we were growing by a rate of about a half of elementary school per year for a period of time. So therefore, we have built 2 middle schools, 4 or 5 elementaries, renovated some schools, and expanded our high school under all the laws that existed before 2008. In fact, the last building, I believe, was approved in the 2006-07 school year. None of those.
And the change now, for those of you who don't know, is it goes to a referendum of the taxpayers if it exceeds certain monetary limits, $10 million.
Of all those buildings, only one had enough opposition from the community to initiate the remonstrance process.
That's right.
The one that initiated the process was overwhelmingly supported by the community. In fact, over 70% approved the project. The 30% who did not actually wanted to spend more money by a significant amount to build a second high school. There was virtually no opposition for the projects to begin with. Our community, which overwhelmingly supported these, understood that there was a responsibility amongst all of our taxpayers to pay off this debt and those bond issues that went along with it. Because of property tax caps, which are now finally starting to see the full implementation and ramification of that law, we are short $1.1 million from being able to make our debt service project or payment. That $1 million deficit in the debt service payment we are still required legally to pay. Obviously, it's just like a mortgage. And next year, the DLGF has informed us that we will take that $1.1 million and spread it along all the property taxpayers so that each of our taxpayers who are not at the cap will have their taxes go up artificially and unnecessarily because they are making up for the difference on that required payment that was not paid by those who were at the cap. We're a unique school corporation in that it's rural, it's suburban, and it's urban. And we have a portion that's in Fort Wayne City with multiple layers of taxes. That's predominantly where the people are hitting the property tax cap. So we're going to take the money that we lost to the caps and spread it out over our farmers and our other community members who don't live in Fort Wayne City. And I think we did a projection, and in about 8 to 10 years, eventually those farmers and other people in the outside of Fort Wayne City will be paying the same property taxes that those inside Fort Wayne City without getting any of the city services.
Ouch.
Because of this unintended consequence.
Okay, would you, Superintendent, thank you for that.
Sure.
This young lady up here in the front, purple, hand up, is my Chief of Staff, Julie Halbig. Would you please be sure we exchange information, and we'll look at this specific
We
issue.
certainly will, because we just want to make sure it's fair to all of our taxpayers.
Yeah, doesn't sound like it. Okay. Oh, okay, Kathy. We'll chat with DLGF and our fiscal guys to see if we can, if this is your only solution. So, yeah, the law of unintended consequences probably sees no greater exercise than in legislative bodies. We have a problem. It may be a problem of, and I said this at a meeting upstairs, it may be a problem that's happened once. Legislators want to fix things. Our remedy is to have a law. Now, the property tax cap's a little bit more complicated than this. But we're going to pass a law, and we're going to say nobody can do that ever again. Or everybody has to do this. And we had a couple of, upstairs when I had a meeting with some folks, I got a couple of other items that were under the law of unintended consequences. And it's usually the best intentions cause it, and you end up with a result like this. So we'll look.
I probably have teachers in my districts who understand that I've done the same thing, where best of intentions, when you hit the floor, they get
Never me. No. Young lady right here that walked in the door.
Hi, I'm Sharita Holder, and I am Vice President of Harding PTSA. I want to know if the bill for education and the parent trigger will be effective upon passage, because we need that at Harding, because we are in favor of a charter school, because unlike Fort Wayne Community Schools that is engaging and is achieving, our school board has failed our children. So we are in favor of that charter school.
I have to say that this bill is really geared toward you.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't geared where it's actually a tool for outstanding school corporations to maybe do something different. It's really geared for places where excellence is not the case. Mm-hmm. And that's why the parent trigger is in it. Has to be, if you looked at an old version of the bill, has to be approved by the State Board of Education, because I don't want a parent trigger coming in because the basketball coach made a bad decision, right? Good point. So the parent trigger now has to go to the State Board of Education for approval. It's current. First of all, as you can see, this bill is not without opposition.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. But it's currently set to have an effective date of July 1 of this year. Now, there's a lot of real estate between now and July 1.
Right. We've been talking with Superintendent Bennett and Senator Cruz and things like that on those.
Right.
But, you know, that would be an option for us, because we aren't getting the support from our school board. And to the math teacher, I do have the numbers, and I can give them to you. But if the Harding students leave East Allen County, it would be $8.2 million that they would leave, and it would bankrupt the district, which they have that much money coming in, and we don't have the tutoring sessions and things like that that have been implemented in the other schools.
Okay, thank you. I've been told we have time for one more question, and then I want to give each of the legislators the opportunity. Now, I hate to do this. I think we've heard from lots of school teachers, okay, and we know your concerns. So if you're not a school teacher and you haven't asked a question, would you raise your hand? Okay. This gentleman's had his hand up most the whole time, and I haven't called on you. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think we stayed a half hour beyond the schedule. I'd stay another 2 hours, but Elliot says it's time to wrap up. So
my name's Chris McCauley. I'm here as a concerned citizen. I really didn't know it was going to be so much about education. But I have to tell you, I love teachers. So there you go. They're fun. My wife's a teacher. She's taught at a private school, taught at public school, Fort Wayne Community Schools, and now she's a teacher at a charter school. And my only comment is, because I asked her what's the difference in her classroom today than in other schools, is she has a lot more autonomy in her school. So take that for what it's worth. And a couple of the other things to address the misinformation about kicking kids out of school. I mean, they're dealing with some major kid issues, from education, not achieving, to very bad discipline issues, and they haven't kicked them out. Believe me, I hear it every night. But that's not what my question is. As a concerned citizen, and I think the election in November said a lot about the state of our nation, not just nationally, but here on a state level as well. And I think it said that there's too much government in people's lives. Bottom line. You can take that for schools. You just passed a bill today. I'm just curious, when you're going to pass a bill that disallows me from combing my hair while I'm driving, eating food while I'm driving, putting my makeup while I'm driving, and it's not that I'm for texting. The fact of the matter is, every law that you pass, you limit our liberties. Please remember that. In the law of unintended consequences, we're seeing cameras going up everywhere. We're seeing just this massive intrusion on our lives from the federal government and now from the state. And you guys are Republicans, supposed to be conservative, and you got 400-plus bills on the legislation, right? Hopefully they don't all get passed, because that means more liberties, for the most part, are gone. So I'm just curious, two things. One, what are you going to do to stop the intrusion of the federal government? Two, what are you going to do to check yourselves as state legislators not to intrude on our freedoms?
I'll address that at the end, but we're beyond our time, and if we'll just go down, and I'll in my closing remarks address the question too, if that's okay.
All right, thank you. And I just quickly to address that is I do think there's been a change in Indianapolis. We are seeing more restrictions to what bills are going through. We are spending less money. In fact, there was just a kind of a mandate put out there. If you're going to do something that's going to spend any money, don't even try. We're not going to hear it. And we can discuss personally on issues like texting and things like that. I will say this real quick. I've heard a lot of discussion tonight about education. I did not come from an education family. I don't have a dad or a mom as a teacher, but I am the parent of a student here at IPFW who's going to be a teacher. She's doing that because of the passion she has for kids. And I see that passion in this room, and I applaud you for that. What you're talking about, you didn't do that because of the pay. You did it because of what you wanted to do for kids. I'm glad we could have these open discussions and debate. We're still going to have this as a work in progress. And, again, thank you for coming out, and I'll pass it down and
No, thank you, and I think your question there at the end hit it right on the head, and I came here tonight to discuss a number of issues with constituents, and I will be hanging around here for a short time to discuss some things with you, but there's nothing more beautiful than the state's rights, and you hit it right on the head, and as people heard me on the campaign trail and discussing our rights as far as the state goes, and my primary concern, and the other legislators here know that, is the state of Indiana. And keeping it the great state. And I often said if the state of Indiana had our own currency today, we'd probably be up towards the top because of the financial stability that our state is in. So I'm 100% on your side, in standing for that. And I want to just say to each of you people that came here tonight that I'm taking your comments very seriously and moving forward with this session. And being a newly elected representative, it is a learning process every day. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, and when I was campaigning, you can contact me via email at the State House. And all of you, that's what us representatives are up here for. And when you leave here, they might be discouraged in me saying this, but tell people that to contact us because that's what we're elected to do. Thank you to each of you for coming, though.
Thanks, Bob. We are your voices. We want you to remember that. That's why we are here. We wanted to hear all of the comments that you gave us tonight. We need to hear what your concerns are. We need to know how you want us to vote, and we need to know why you want us to vote that way. So pick up our literature, please. All of our contact information is on the literature. If you want to be informed when bills are coming forward, let us know. Please.
Well, the topic was the promise and problems of democracy, and I guess we identified a lot of both. As you can see, the issues that those that you elect at the state level are weighty. We didn't talk about issues that we will be dealing with, like the repeal amendment, which puts a check by the states on federal government enactments. We'll be dealing with that this year. We didn't talk about the effort that we've made by appointing, ironically, a committee on government reduction. Not regulation, but reduction. No extra pay for anybody, no more people. Same people, more work. But we're looking at overregulation of schools. One of the bills we didn't talk about tonight that I predict will be moving forward is to give local traditional public schools some of the same flexibility that we're fighting for charters, to be free of some of the undue regulation that teachers have to deal with, and administrators and superintendents and school boards today, to free them to be innovative, as we said, and not spend so much time filling out paperwork that gets filed at the Indiana Department of Education. We know that we're dealing with real people. We know that we're dealing with teachers. We know that we're dealing with principals and superintendents. But most importantly, and I think we need to refocus on, we're dealing with kids. Our goal is, like your goal, I'm certain, to be sure on these education issues that everything we do forwards the opportunity for each Hoosier student to have the right education for them and an excellent education. It is the economic development issue for the future of our state. I can only pledge two things. Number one, to listen. I came. I knew it might be a little rough tonight. I'll continue to come, and I'll continue to have dialogue. I'll continue to work with the great legislative delegation that you've sent to Indianapolis to represent you and to address your local concerns, and we'll pledge to do the very best that we can for the betterment of the state of Indiana. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and I appreciate the university putting this together.